I don't know what problem you've been through. People go through big challenges. And once they come out of them, then they can leave us with some lessons. This is Now Tell Us. I'm your host, Anthony Muirore. Today we have a great guest with us known as Jon Chandonnet, and he's going to be here shortly to tell us about one man, his diagnosis, and the road to a vibrant life that is covered in his book known as Shadow Summit. Stay tuned. Please remember to share this episode with all your friends. And if you have a question, ask. We will try our level best to answer it, or rather, Jon is going to answer that question that you may direct to him. And if you have any comment about the show, make it. We love feedback. Yes. And now, I don't want to take one more minute because I know Jon has a lot to tell us. So, why don't you join me as we go together to meet Jon to come and tell us? Here we go. Hello, Jon.
Hey, Anthony, so great to be with you today.
Yeah, it's such an honor to have you here at Now Tell Us. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, my journey, do you want me to go into my journey?
First, let's find out where you are in the world.
Yeah, right. Let's set a little context first, right?
Yeah,
Um,
where are
I,
you?
where am I? I am in San Diego right now.
Okay.
Beautiful San Diego.
Uh-huh. How's the weather? And what's so good there that if I decide to come there, what will I enjoy?
Well, I, I'm not going to say too much about it because it's pretty nice here, Anthony. It's probably 70 and sunny right now, so we won't get too much into the weather because we want people to continue to watch and not spite me.
Okay, okay. So let's hear what Jon is going to tell us today. Now, I mentioned before we get started that you have a book, and that's what we are going to base our discussion on, and is known as a Shadow Summit: One Man, His Diagnosis, and the Road to a Vibrant Life by Jon Chandonnet. Now, before we even go to that, we can know about your background and then tell us, dive us into the story at some point.
Yeah, so my background, I was born in the East Coast, hard charging. I excelled. I worked really hard in school, and I did my best, and life came somewhat easy for me, which
Mm-hmm.
was which was great. And I was super fortunate. I was very blessed in many ways. And then at 27, I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a sucker punch. I had the world by the tail. I was a grad student at MIT, and the world was at my feet. And what did I do? I denied it.
Mm-hmm.
27, I had no sense of my mortality. And I was thinking, I'm so young. I don't have this. I don't want to attach to this. And so I chose not to.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony, I did amazing things. I graduated, got a job with a startup, technology startup, moved to the West Coast, ran marathons, triathlons, climbed Mount Whitney, Mount Shasta, Mount Tyndall, really tall mountains in the Sierras, 14,000 feet. And I did everything that I focused my mind on, I was able to accomplish, even with the diagnosis. And I was super fortunate. But 8 years in, the disease took me to my knees. I could barely walk, talk, think, speak. And I had to find a different way. I was only 35,
Mm-hmm.
and I had just been married. I wanted to have a child, and my old way of being um, brought me to my knees. It just didn't work with me to be able to live the life I wanted.
Hmm. Now, for someone who may be hearing this word for the very first time, what is multiple sclerosis?
Yeah, right. Multiple sclerosis. Right. What is that? It's a neurological disease that affects the nerves in the brain and leads to scleroses, which is decay, where um, the nerves, the myelin sheath, it's the myelin sheath, which is the protective covering around the nerves, like insulation in a pipe, that wears away. And it's a fatty substance, and it allows signals that are traveling through the nerves to escape. I leak energy, I leak thoughts, just I leak neurological impulses because my nerves are frayed.
Hmm. Wow, that's a tough position to be in.
Right?
How was it? What were you going through, coming to the point of diagnosis? What led to that? I mean, were you having some challenges, or did
Right.
something occur?
Right.
Something in
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. How did I know? How did I know I had this?
Mm,
Um, I was playing intramural basketball um, uh, in grad school. I was playing at the Harvard Law School gym in Cambridge, and I lost fine motor control of my right leg and right arm. And so I was like a spaz on the court, and I didn't have control of my leg. And so I was trying to will my way down the court, and I was limping and so forth. And I made one trip down the court, and I was like, enough is enough. I raised my hand. I was like, I need a sub. Went out, stretched on the sideline, and tried to get to resolve. It's like, this is just a pulled muscle. I was an athlete in high school, and I did club lacrosse in college, and I was like, I've pulled muscles before. It's just a pulled muscle, buddy. Come on, get over it. You'll be all right. Just go on the sideline, stretch it out. You'll be fine.
mm,
Uh, that led to a month, and it didn't resolve. And then I finally got the MRI, and the MRI showed my brain had lesions, which is area there the gray matter has decayed. Um, so yeah.
wow. What was your response at that diagnosis? I mean, we all are living a life, and then one day we wake up and we are told something that may be frightening, something that may be least of what we expected. How did you respond to that?
Um, Not well, Anthony. I mean, I denied it. I
Yeah.
denied it. I,
Hmm.
it's the typical response when you said you have something. I'm like, I don't have this, and I have relapsing remitting, which is a strain where things go away and they come back, and that's the way it was back then,
Hmm.
and the symptoms kind of went away, and I was able to regain function and full
Hmm.
function, and
Hmm.
so that allowed me to say, I don't have you. I'm not going. I'm going to explode into life, and it caused me, like, I already performed at a very high level. I mean, I was a grad student at one of the best schools in the world, and you know, I was like, I'm not going to stop, and I used it as an excuse to go into hyperdrive, Anthony. Like,
Mm.
I thought I was working hard and charging hard before. Afterward, I sent it into a whole other way, and really became super focused on my profession and super focused on physical and working out, and I channeled my anxiety, because I had anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and fear, and I channeled that anxiety and fear into action and into athletic action,
Mm-hmm.
and my body was able to perform, for the first couple of years anyway. And it was, 6 years in, I thought I had the answer to MS, which is denial.
Mm-hmm.
And over the next 2 years, so after 8 years, that didn't work. And I realized that I had to find a different way. And so I went inside. I took 4 months off from work, which at a hard charging corporate environment, working for a technology startup, which is corporate suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And but I was like, I have to take 4 months off. I did a raw vegan detox and just ate raw vegan food and did other healing modalities, other mental and emotional and spiritual healing modalities, that over that 4 months, I got my life back, and my body was functioning again the
Mm-hmm.
way it had, the way it had, you know, 9 years earlier, even before the diagnosis. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got my life back. I got my body back. Which was profound. I can't overplay that, Anthony. I can't. It was really an amazing awakening,
Mm-hmm.
and, that's why I wrote the book, because I I took charge, and I burned the ship on my old thoughts and my old way of being, and I found a new way of being that enabled me to stay healthy. And 4 months after, well, 5 months after I went there, my wife was pregnant, and we had a child.
Mm.
And
That's
I
good.
didn't, Anthony, I did not think that was going to be possible,
Mm-hmm.
you know 6 months earlier. I mean, I was at a very low point.
Mm-hmm.
I lost hope, and I tried to stay optimistic. I tried to and be a very positive, optimistic person. I mean, if anyone asks you, yeah, what's that Jon Chandonnet guy all about? Well, man, that guy's so positive. He's so optimistic. Well, I channeled that into getting my health back,
Mm-hmm.
and I did.
Wow. Wow. And you did it.
And I did it. And I did it. And so, but then I had to find my way. When I was at OHI in San Diego, that place where I did the raw vegan retreat, Anthony, I found 4 keys to well-being, which is mind, so mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And then over the next 8 years, as I wrote the book, which took me 8 years to write, I found three more, which is social, financial, um, and professional. Sorry, like, oh, what's the
Yes.
seventh? Professional. I had to
Yeah.
find a new way of working that fed who I wanted to be and allowed me to have my best reflection. So those those seven key aspects of well-being is what I found through this journey, and it's what I wrote about in the final chapter of the book as what I found, and it's what I've been coaching people on for the last 10 years. So, like, it's not just raw food. So, like, what's the key, John, to well-being? Is it raw food? Is that the answer? No, it's those seven aspects, and those seven aspects have seven inherent energies, um, which can power your best life. And so at the beginning, I talked about how my nerves leak energy. And
Mm,
so because my nerves leak energy, I have to find a way to not let that happen. And I
mhm,
can, how do I not leak energy physically? How do I not leak energy emotionally? How do I not leak energy professionally, financially, socially, mentally, spiritually, socially, the things I say, mentally, the words that I think, and emotionally, how do I not allow feeling to allow me to waste energy? So that's what that's what I've learned, and that's what I've taken away from my story, and that's the essence of of how I can assist other people live their best lives. So, at the start, Anthony, you said people go through tough circumstances and they learn something. They learn some wisdom, and they take some wisdom away. Um, well, I have definitely I have faced down some very tough circumstances because 18 years ago, as all this was going away, before I made the decision to go to OHI, um, I was close to being in a wheelchair,
mm,
and then that's a slippery slope. Once you stop moving, once you go to a wheelchair, then you go to being bedridden, and it
mm,
can be, that's that's the progression of things, and that's where I could have been, but I found a way to jump those tracks. I found a way to go from down here to up here to find a whole different way of living and being. Um, yeah.
yeah, you must be a very courageous person.
Well, well, you're kind, Anthony. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I
Mm,
mean, none of us know what we're capable of. I tell people that story all the time, and people are like, "Oh gosh, I could never have done that." Oh gosh, God, that's amazing. Um, well, you never know what you're capable of until you're put in tough circumstances. You know,
mm,
you never know, and it's the circumstances that make the man or the woman into who they are. It's those circumstances that that allow you to come into who you are.
mm,
And that those circumstances, Anthony, those circumstances, 18, 20 years ago, that could have broke me. That
mhm,
could have broke me, and I could be a broken person right now. You know,
mm.
I could be, and you probably wouldn't blame me, Anthony.
Yeah.
You
And
probably wouldn't blame me. You're like, oh, I totally understand, buddy. It's a tough disease. I'm sorry. And yeah, there's a lot of sympathy, and
mm,
yeah, I get a lot of sympathy, but that's not going to allow me to live my best life. That
mm.
you know,
Yeah. And you're a good example of what I call the seed. A seed is taken and is put in the ground, underground, somewhere we don't see it. And to make matters worse, it gets damp and it starts rotting. Just like you described that your nerves were rotting. And then it at that point, when the seed starts kind of rotting, that's the point that someone could give up on life. A- And the thing that makes it productive is when it's being there, when it's underground, when it's damp, when there is no light, when there is no hope, then it starts digging deeper. The roots keep going into the soil, and then it comes out and becomes a plant that produces fruit at some point. I think we can describe your situation as that.
you're so right, Anthony. I think you nailed that because I had to dive deep. I really did.
Mm-hmm.
And then that diving deep, there's a reckoning, there's a reckoning with myself, and I chose to look at myself and take an honest look, and I had to change a whole bunch of behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
whole bunch of behaviors. I had to take an honest look at my life and be like, you know what, buddy, you can try to cling to those old beliefs and habits, but you know what, buddy, those probably aren't going to serve you. And so you could you might be able to benefit from shifting some of those beliefs and behaviors and habits. And that's what I did. I did that. And I took my life from here to here. And and I'm no different than anyone else. You know,
Mm,
I mean, we we all have one life, and we
yeah.
all have to make choices, Anthony, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, you know, that seed in the ground, I don't know that it has consciousness to make choices, but it does persevere. That seed in the ground does persevere.
Mm-hmm.
It does find a way to burst out of the ground and sprout into something new. And I think I think we all have that ability within us,
Mm,
um,
yeah.
to
Yeah, we all have that ability, and as you say, we need change when we realize that we are in a position that we may not have wished to be in. When we find ourselves in situations that are challenging, and we review and see that some of the habits that we were in are not going to serve us into the future, then we need to change. Now, the question that I have for you, that you may eh, tell us, how did you, because after changing, there are many people who may go back to their old habits, to the things they were doing, and you are talking of several years that you've gone through this, and you're still going on strong. Now, you speak of the seven aspects, but could there be one thing, particular thing that has made you to stay focused and keep on pushing over all things, to keep on uh, working on those seven? Okay. Is there one general thing that you say, I took that strength and it has kept me focused on these aspects?
and I it's a great question. It's a great question. And I would say it's probably faith. You
Mm,
know,
faith.
it is I had to have deep faith in myself
Hmm.
and in life. You
Yeah.
know, especially when I was in my first 3 weeks at OHI, turning my life around, because it was hard. I mean, I was getting up at 6 in the morning. I would juice my own wheatgrass. I would go to exercise and stretch class, and I would just eat raw food all day long. And I was fasting, and I just I just had to have faith, and
Mm,
I just had to believe that it was possible. And it how did I do that? Well, I had heard of stories of other people with MS who had turned their condition around, through raw food, um, and so I became faithful, you know, and I became open to everything, and I did a whole bunch of what would be seen as extreme things and modalities to get my health back.
mm,
Um, but and sometimes I would keep doing them, and sometimes I would realize that they had worn out their welcome. They no longer were working, and Like, so I had to use like faith and intuition paired with rational mind
Mm-hmm.
and thought, and I had to pair the two to shift my life. And that's like in writing a book. Writing a book is the yin and yang of the rational and the intuitive or feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to pair both of those. So, in addition to faith, Anthony, a second thing that I would say is contributing to my why I've been able to stay healthy is that pairing of rational and intuitive, you know,
Mm.
thinking and feeling. It's
Wow.
it's not one, and it's not just one. It's both, and you need to, and it's a dance, and it's an art, and
Mhm.
yeah, there's science in it, but there's a lot of art.
Wow. Your book, Shadow Summit. One thing I'll ask is, how did you come up with that name? And the other thing that you can talk about is, you took 8 years to write the book. How was it? Did you write on a daily basis? Did you, what frequency did you write it?
Yeah, yeah. So Shadow Summit is, you know, the summit is represents the ego. So in the shadow of the ego, so in the shadow of the summit, is the truth, and so that's what that title means.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so writing, um, Anthony, I was about as far from a writer of narrative prose when I started this. Like I was a rational corporate guy. Like I could write you a great email updating you on where my project was, but man, writing narrative prose that 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 stirred the soul and the emotion, man, that was about as far from my experience as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, oh, sorry, that was as far as my experience as you can get. So, I wrote, I wrote 30 hours a week, 50 weeks a year for 8 years until I until I wrote the book, until I figured it out. And that's part of, like, it was pulled from me. That was pulled from me. It was desire and obligation. It was desire that was wanting me to write that rather than obligation. Obligation is the hand on the back saying,
Mm-hmm.
you well, you've got to do this. You've got to do it. If I had tried to use that obligation energy, I would have burned out after a year. And so that that desire energy is what compelled me to write the book and finish the book.
Wow, wonderful. And we are glad that you did. Because if you've been somewhere, experienced things, and then come to tell us the things that you experienced through the challenges that you had gone through, you can always be some hope to someone out there who could be going through the same. You could be.
Totally, Anthony. I say I'm hope in a bottle. That's me. I'm hope in a bottle.
Mhm.
That's just go to that Jon Chandonnet guy. Get hope in a bottle. Crack open that hope and take a swig. Yeah.
Yeah. So go to John, the hope in a bottle.
Right.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So thank you very much. Yeah, we are on Now Tell Us. For you maybe joining us now, or even if you may be listening to the recorded version of this, this is Now Tell Us, and we have Jon Chandonnet and talking about his book Shadow Summit. Wow, is quite a story, quite a story. And I encourage each and every person who's listening to this to go to Amazon and get that book. You can always find the link in the description. Just click on it and it will take you there. And go and buy it, read it,
Awesome. Thank
get
you.
get some hope in a bottle by John.
There you go.
Yeah, I also discovered that actually narrated it yourself. Tell us
I
about.
did.
Yeah.
Right. I did. I narrated it myself as well.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, so I not only wrote it, I spoke the whole thing. So yeah, that's yeah, it was quite a journey.
Yeah, I will tell you, you're quite someone because you're ahead of me. I wrote a book about 3, 4 years back. I have never put it into audio, and oh, so you're ahead of me. I,
Yeah.
I may follow your footsteps.
Yeah. Well, we all have our own journey. We all are where we are, and took my book 10 years to be out before I decided to free the words from the tyranny of the page and to record it myself. So
Congratulations for
th-
everything.
thank you, thank you,
Yes,
Anthony.
and thank you very much for coming to Now Tell Us. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. As we are coming to the end of this show, we would like you to just sum it up with telling us some few words that you think I myself or someone who's listening should never forget in life. What are they?
Um, you're worth it. You're worth it, and just take a step. You're worth it. Take a step.
You're worth it. Take a step. Coming from Jon Chardonnay. You're worth it. Take a step. Don't just stay there. Take an action. And the action that we are asking you on this episode is to go to Amazon and get the book. That's the action that we are requesting this day. Shadow Summit by Jon Chardonnay. One
Hope in
man,
a bottle. Hope in a bottle.
hope in a bottle. One man, his diagnosis, and the road to a vibrant life. Yes, and that's about it today. Thank you once again, John.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
Yeah, this has been Now Tell Us. I have been your host, Anthony Morore, and together with our wonderful guest, Jon Chandonnet, we're saying, yes, take a step. You're worth it. Bye for now. Until next time. Bye.